Test 1, Test 2. Checking in for Steelers Depot live stream. As usual, we'll give it a couple minutes, let some people hopefully join the chat. And I'll be... Oh, here we go. Allie Howard, Nick Mark. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Steelers Depot live stream. Sorry, excuse me. Oh my goodness, that's a atrocious way to start this stream. But yeah, sorry I've been away, guys. Was at the Senior Bowl last week. Could not do any videos. We have a lot of stuff coming up though for the Senior Bowl coverage. I have a mock draft that will go up on Steelers Depot on Wednesday morning at 8:30. I'll do a video on that too that kind of maybe breaks it down, does it in a little different format for you guys as well. If you have any questions, anything you'd like to see from the season, go through the coaches tape. Any questions about the Senior Bowl? I was down there, covered it the whole week. A lot of fun. You guys can feel free to ask any of those questions in the chat. Hang out here for half hour, an hour, kind of see how things goes. I'm trying to get back in the routine and making some videos for you guys. Know I've been away for a little while. Yeah, Nick, been a long off season, and it's not going to really pick up too much here in free agency, at least, because the Steelers are going to be awfully quiet. It won't be like last year where you had Steven Nelson, Dante Moncrief, and Mark Barron. For better or for worse, it at least was a flurry of activity. This team is so limited cap-wise, assuming that they place the tag on Bud Dupree, that they just don't have the cap flexibility to do a whole lot. So, make sure that everything looks okay. Everything looks alright. Again, you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Have some Senior Bowl recap last couple of days, some winners and losers. Had it on the most recent podcast, talked about some of the highlights and lowlights. Usually highlights try to focus on the guys that are doing well and just kind of how guys can win and how they can help any team, including the Steelers. So if you guys have any particular game you want me to look at, any questions you guys have, here's one from Allie Howard, who's always been in the chat. Appreciate that, man. Alex, did you see some big, fast receivers at the Senior Bowl you'd like to talk about? Yeah, I think the receivers were impressive in general. I think it's a strong receiver class overall, both in terms of the seniors, guys that have graduated, and then the underclassmen. A lot of underclassmen declared. Obviously, some of those names won't be in the running for Pittsburgh because they're going to be long off the board by the time number 49 rolls around. But I think my favorite receiver going down there was a guy that I figured was going to have a really strong week and probably get on the radar of others, was Denzel Mims, the wide receiver from Baylor. Now, he's not the most athletic guy in the sense of long speed, especially, and also his just general change of direction. He is kind of a 9-route type of guy, but he's probably the best above the rim, jump ball, 50-50 ball receiver, maybe in this whole draft. I think he's at least right up there. And he's a guy that plays with tenacity. His blocking is excellent. He was talking about how his grandma raised him. He's trying to do it for her and trying to make it and thrive in the NFL to kind of give back to her. So he's got a good motivation, a good guy with great body control, great nuance in his route running to create space at the top of the route, showing late hands at the catch point. Just a pretty technical player. And usually don't associate technique with some of these Baylor receivers. You think about Corey Coleman years back. He wasn't the most technical guy. They took plays off. They didn't really block. I mean, Mims is not that type of guy. Obviously, different coaching staff change. Matt Rule, I think, really had a positive impact on that whole program. Obviously, how he ends up in Carolina for the head coaching job. But other guys, too, were impressive. Van Jefferson from Florida. Austin Mack from Ohio State was pretty solid early on. James Prochet is going to be a good slot receiver. Didn't have the most impressive week, but I think someone that fits what the Steelers are looking for well. So a lot of receivers down there, talented guys, small school guys like Antonio Gandy Golden can flash, made some big plays at Liberty. Steelers obviously don't go in the small school pool too often, but it was good for him to kind of get down there in Mobile and show what he can do against tougher competition. Nick says, I watched the final Tomlin Tuesday, I believe. He said there was a Big Ben elbow update coming in the beginning of February, right? Yeah, he said about February 1st. That is not a hard and fast deadline. It's sometime basically early February, so if you don't hear anything on the 1st itself, it may not have happened yet, or whatever the case is. There's no guarantee we'll even hear the results of that. I imagine we will in some sort of brief statement, either by the team or by Ben on his Twitter account. It's obviously not going to go into a lot of details if there is any sort of information about the prognosis and the direction. But I imagine we'll get a little blurb if things are positive, saying that the doctor's giving him good news. He's on track. He fully expects to be ready for training camp. Hopefully, I know he wants to start throwing by OTAs, which will be about April and May. So, sometime in about the next 7 to 10 days, we'll hear something. But don't it's not guaranteed it's going to be February 1st. It may be after that date. Do you think keeping Dupree is the smartest thing to do? I'd love to do it if the cap situation was different. Yeah, I'm not concerned about the whole Woodley thing or what happens after Dupree gets paid. Does he go into a shell? Does he just care about the money? That's never been a concern of mine. His motor was always excellent, even in past years where he was struggling and looked like a guy you wanted to move on from, and just an underwhelming first-round pick. I just think health was such a big factor for him this year, staying healthy. And I guess there was a question of, can you trust him to stay healthy going forward? But I think he's a guy that plays hard, has a lot of 1-2, high volume snap guy. I understand the point you're trying to say, because what happens about all the other things you need to take care of, and you're going to be stressed in a lot of ways if you have that franchise tag. So I think the first goal is you really want to work as hard as possible to try to do a long-term deal to reduce that cap number in 2020, to give you some breathing room to maybe do a couple other things. Maybe you could be able to avoid releasing a Mark Barron, or more likely a Vance McDonald or something like that. So point taken on that, but my overall thought, and this kind of goes into more the reality of the situation, but I understand the point as well. This organization works so hard to try to build up its defense. So much of an investment. You guys know the story. 11 draft picks, first-round draft picks on this roster. Trading up for Devin Bush, trading for Minkah Fitzpatrick, signing Joe Hayden, signing Steven Nelson, some of the biggest free agent contracts this team's ever handed out. You don't want to, as soon as you get to that mountaintop of being an elite defense, and I consider that defense in 2019 to be elite, you don't want to immediately start losing those pieces the second that you get there, especially in a year where Ben was hurt, the offense sucked, and now you see in 2020 with Ben coming back, you really have a shot at this thing. This is your path to winning a Super Bowl, where you have that similar elite defense with Ben coming back and Juju healthy and all the other things. James Conner hopefully healthy, and so you don't want to regret and say we lose Dupree and now we're trying to rebuild this defense we just spent the last 4 to 5 years trying to build up and invest in. So I think that's the real reason why you would want to keep Dupree, and why I'm okay with tagging him. But again, hopefully you get a long-term deal done. No guarantees, obviously. Nice play by TJ Watt here, by the way. But yeah, that's my stance there. Hey, F483. Appreciate you stopping by. Donald Tillman. Don't you think we need a receiver to take the top off, seeing that Juju and James Washington ain't that speedy? I think Washington had a good year. You're right, he's not a 4-4 burner, but I think he showed he can be a vertical threat, and obviously the poor quarterback play really dinged his production and value, but he still had a good year and still showed a lot of encouraging signs. I think, and this is going to be reflected as a little bit of a teaser for my mock draft tomorrow. What this team needs is a middle of the field presence. I mean, they just didn't get any production middle of the field last year. Now, granted, Vance wasn't productive and Juju was hurt, and that affected things. But still, I think where this offense has to win more often and more effectively is middle of the field. I think James Washington can be a vertical outside guy. Deontay Johnson, obviously, a good rookie year as the X receiver. Juju can play on the outside when he's healthy. He can play in the slot too, obviously. But you really want to have those strong middle of the field type presences, so teams can't just play basically cover 2 and take away the outsides and you got nothing between the numbers. So that's where I think the emphasis has to be, as opposed to pure speed. But again, I'm not going to put myself in a box. You want to just find talented guys so you can make your roster and make an impact in a positive way as soon as possible, with this kind of 2-year window to win a Super Bowl 2020 and 2021 that this team's existing in right now. So I'm not committed to a certain type of receiver. I'm more focused on the talent. But I do think you want to have that slot, middle of the field presence, like Eli Rogers gave you a couple of years ago, but hopefully more than that. Ryan Switzer gave you a little bit of 2 years ago, but certainly more than that. That's what this team is missing. They got a lot of big, long, strider, kind of vertical type guys. You want someone that's maybe a little bit smaller who can win in different ways and in different routes. Nick, yeah, I miss Ben too. It's going to be fun to see him at camp again, assuming all goes well. Samantha Eckhorn, appreciate you stopping by. If we don't keep Dupree, can anyone on this team adequately fill his role? If so, who? No, not really. And that's the other reason to go ahead and keep Dupree as well, because there are no really in-house options. Oladeney, has had impressive, preseasons and camps, but there's been some injuries too. Just hasn't seen the field a whole lot. Chicolo's almost certainly like 99% chance he's going to get released. So then you're just trying to, if you lose Dupree, then you got to go ahead and find someone in the draft all over again. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, because now you're spending draft capital, to try to replace Dupree, and you don't know what you're going to get out of that, especially in year 1. So every expectation, just in the reality of it, that this team is going to at least tag Dupree and then try to work out a long-term deal. John Russell, am I sound like I'm 10? No, I'm 11, so you're close. I'm kidding, I'm not 11. I think Bud is a stud and only gets better each year. Yeah, Dupree was really impressive, and I know it isn't reflected in the games played because he played most games in his career, but these guys played through a lot of injuries. Whether that was 2 years ago, he went through a torn pec at the end of the year, the last probably 6 weeks, and he played through probably a pretty severe elbow injury, and that would have been 2017. Had a torn groin that missed half the year, and only the second year, I think his sophomore year, that kind of slowed things up for him there. So he's played through a lot of injuries, sometimes not always ones that we see on an injury report or in him standing on the sideline and Sweat's missing games, but he's a tough dude, and so I think that's one reason why I'm not worried about him just going all Woodley and just kind of fading after getting paid, because this is a guy that's worked really hard to get paid, obviously, but I still have confidence he's not going to just go into a shell after getting paid with how tough and hard he's worked to get to this point. If we would work out a deal with Dupree, what would you think about like 40 million between him and TJ? Yeah, I mean that is a fair point. In your cap allocation, how do you make it both work? Obviously, you're not going to let TJ Watt get away. Dupree's going to cost, in my opinion, at least 17 million per year, just above what Darius Smith got last offseason with the Packers, and then Watt's going to be rivaling in somewhere in the 20s, probably 20. At least 20 is the floor. I mean, you're probably saying 23, 25, somewhere in that range. So it's going to be tricky to try to get that done. I'm not the cap guy. I can't give you a great roadmap to how to do it, but you're right. I mean, that is a lot of investment. You still have Ben on the books, obviously, in Watt and Dupree. That right there takes up a ton of cap space, no doubt about it. So fair point, but this team's always made it work, but that is reality. They are pretty cap strapped. Nick Mark, look at the Niners last year playing with multiple backups and elite defense. Look where they're at now. Yeah, that's a great point. They lost Jimmy Garoppolo last year. They come back, and things got a whole lot better. Nice punt scheme here by Danny Smith to try to get some pressure on this one. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the blueprint. Certainly, is you just your defense is going to be strong, and you get your quarterback back, obviously, and that's going to transform your offense in so many ways you took for granted until last year happened, and you kind of see what this team is like without Ben. Yeah, nice job here by Medikevich into the A gap. Gonna have whoever this is in the other A gap. Get this confusion between the long snapper and the personal protector. You get Medikevich free, just misses it, close, and then nice job to kind of fall away from the punter too, so you don't run into him. But anyway, just want to talk to the tape a little bit here. Donald Tillman, do you think having an off season with Minkah will make Terrell Edmunds a better strong safety? I don't know if playing with Minkah has a direct impact on Edmunds playing better. I think it makes his lack of playmaking more tolerable when you have a free safety that's as impactful as Minkah. When you had Sean Davis and Edmunds, two guys that aren't really playmakers, it really highlighted the issue all the more. So when you have one guy back there, you can live with Edmunds really not making any sort of splash play. So that doesn't make Edmunds better. Obviously, he just kind of masks and, like I said, just makes you deal with it more than you would if neither of those guys back there were making plays, or your defense has 38 takeaways. You can kind of live with a little bit more. Your strong safety basically making 0 splash plays through 2 years in his career. So I don't know if it makes him better. I think just himself getting reps and getting comfortable, and with age and experience. Though we saw with Dupree, Edmunds is still just 22 years old. Supposed to be his rookie year. He came out a year early out of Virginia Tech. So those are the things that'll make Edmunds better, less so than playing with Minkah. Although, of course, playing with a guy of his caliber and all that, teams that maybe throw out Minkah less will throw out Edmunds more. In that sense, you get more reps. You're more active. Those things can help, but I just think natural experience will be the thing that makes Edmunds better, not playing with Minkah. Hey, Jimmy. What's up, Alex? What about Washington or Deontay playing in the slot with Juju and Deion Kingston on the outside and rotate those two guys depending on down and distance? We'll see. I don't really see Washington as too much of a slot receiver. Deontay potentially did do some of that at Toledo, but I think they wanted to just make sure he's getting a lot of reps as the X receiver. Obviously, in Pittsburgh, they've always had the mentality of receivers have to be able to move around. You can't just play one spot. So those guys will move just based on certain packages and matchups and week-to-week stuff. But in terms of being a primary slot guy, it's really been Juju without a whole lot behind them right now. So that's why I think you really got to put an emphasis on adding to the position. And we'll see with Deon Cain. I'm excited for Deon Cain. You know, a guy that came in off the what was it, the Colts roster, and then to the practice squad, and then taken away by Pittsburgh, signed off Indy's practice squad, and now going into a full year for him, a full offseason, a chance to breathe. Obviously had some impressive moments in limited action last year, so that's a guy that we should think about as well. And Johnny Holton will be around too, and obviously Holton really offers you nothing as a wide receiver, but he's a really strong gunner that made a lot of impact plays on special teams. And when you're talking that last receiver spot, the last had on game day, you want to think about special teams and in that framework, and who's going to run down kicks and punts, and Holton did a great job of that last year. Benny Snell's first carry ever, one of the early carries. Little cut here on third down. Great job in space. Yeah, Snell had a good year, and that's one reason why we talk about running back position. I don't view that as the major red flag need. In a perfect world, if you had more draft picks and fewer holes that are going to be created and more draft capital to attack things in free agency, yeah, maybe you look at running back higher. But Snell was impressive. He'll go into year two, will drop a little bit of weight. Connor is obviously there, the most talented back on the roster. Health is clearly the biggest concern, and you can't trust that, understood, but you have all these guys coming back, whether you're talking Samuels, Gareth White, going into his, basically, like Deon Cain, having a chance to go through a full offseason program and training camp with Pittsburgh will be big for him, second-year player. Overall, all those things will make Gareth White, in theory, better than he was this past year, where he did certainly show something, again, similar to Deon Cain. So I just don't see running back as that urgent, pressing need where you got to take somebody in the second round. It just isn't on my list because of all the other needs you have to address, where there just really aren't any options, like at tight end, like interior offensive line where this team's been gutted, like nose tackle, assuming Hargrave is gone, which is a safe bet. How do you address that? Safety depth, which is there just aren't bodies there. There just aren't names, and that's why I have running back lower on the list than some other positions. Shouldn't Trey's interception make up for Terrell? Yeah, Terrell and Trey Edmunds both have the same number of interceptions, one, which is pretty bad when you're running back and you're starting strong safety at the same number of career interceptions. Samantha Gordon, will this new quarterback coach really make a difference with the offense? It's hard to say. It's hard to quantify the impact, but I think it was smart to finally add to the position, to the coaching staff, I should say. You drafted Mason Rudolph to be your franchise, and not give him a dedicated coach is probably a disservice to that investment and a disservice to Rudolph's development and to him personally. So Canada, by all means, by all accounts, is a really bright guy. Hopefully, some of the things he'll incorporate in the offense, more motion, maybe a little more play action. It's hard to say exactly what kind of influence he'll have, but yeah, I think just having someone to be that dedicated guy will be helpful. So hopefully, I'm gonna switch games here. I don't want to see Ben getting hurt again. That makes me sad. So we're just gonna switch to another random game. Appreciate everybody stopping by again. Any questions you have in the chat, let me know again. If you missed out, or I said it early in the stream, we'll have my first Steelers mock draft on Steelers Depot bright and early on Wednesday morning. So you guys can check that out. I do have the third round comp pick assumed in as well. I think it's kind of silly not to. So let me know your thoughts. Just the first one. Still learn a lot about this draft class, but wanted to get a mock draft out there. Usually do one around this time of year, right after the Senior Bowl. And so I'll be curious to get your guys' thoughts on what I have to offer. Michael Campolatro, probably butchered that. Michael Camp, we'll go it. Do you think the Steelers go O-line, tight end, or D-tackle in the second round? Yeah, I think all those things are on the table. I've kind of had those as some of my three biggest needs, plus safety depth I would put in there as well. So the Steelers always say they draft BPA. That's not really true. I mean, they're not going to draft literally the best player available unless it's overwhelmingly better than whoever's next on their list. But it's usually where value and need intersect at its highest point. So I think all those positions are certainly on the table, and we'll see what I go with my mock draft with the 49th pick. You'll find out tomorrow morning. Steelers are unbelievable at drafting, especially in recent history, in one draft, but why can't they draft DBs if all dependent on it? I wish I knew. I just don't have a good answer. I think in the past, their philosophy was cover three, zone corners, physical guys who could tackle the catch. The emphasis was less on great athletes, less on playmakers, and when you're drafting secondary about guys that aren't great athletes and playmakers, you generally have a lower chance of hitting. Now, at safety, that's changed. They've drafted some Sparky Duke, Sean Davis, Terrell Edmunds were some of the best athletes at their position. But then there was an overcorrection potentially where they just drafted too many pure athletes and then didn't focus on maybe some of the playmaking and technique and little things and stuff like that. That might have been a factor as well. I mean, Davis was not a bad pick, but Artie Burns, maybe they focused too much on athleticism and just rawness and couldn't mold it and coach it as well and as quickly as they thought that they could. It's hard to say, but yeah, the track record is not pretty, but at least the team was smart and made, outside moves where they signed proven guys like Joe Hayden, like Steven Nelson. They trade for Mika Fitzpatrick, who has proven that's been their best method of success, obviously. So at least they recognize that. Let's maybe pull back on drafting some of these guys and let's find alternative methods to bringing in some DB help, and certainly they have. I don't know what that comment about Ben taking a hit or retiring would leave room for TJ. I don't want Ben to retire. I would like him to be a Steeler for as long as possible. Steeler for life from your Senior Bowl trip. Do you have a player you'd love to see with the Steelers? There were certainly some players that felt like they fit. One of those guys is going to be my mock draft tomorrow, so I don't want to go too much into those details because I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, there were guys that certainly fit. Matt Hennessy, the center from Temple, kind of felt like a Steeler. I don't know if I would love him to be a Steeler, but he just kind of felt like he fits what they're looking for, certainly at a position of need. So some of the tight ends were impressive. Some of the guys that aren't guys I'm super high on, but like Evan Weaver, I've talked about a lot today. The inside linebacker from Cal kind of feels like Tyler Matakevich 2.0, just a little bit taller. I think this is what Devin Bush for his career. Zach, maybe. So yeah, I mean there were some guys that felt like they were Steelers. I'll have to go through the whole class more before I really start thinking about it in those terms. But yeah, if you go back on Steelers Depot, I have my mailbag today. I kind of talk about those things a little bit more in depth about guys that kind of felt like they fit well in Pittsburgh. And you'll see my mock draft tomorrow. Obviously, the guys I choose are ones I think that, on paper at least, some I'm more familiar with than others, do seem to fit what the Steelers are looking for. Dragon Jay-Z, Snell can't lose any weight. He gets any smaller, he's going to lose all his pop. No, I mean, that's all these running backs have dropped weight. I'm not saying if you drop 20 pounds, maybe you drop 5 pounds, maybe you drop, about 10 pounds. James Conner did it. Le'Veon Bell did. Le'Veon Bell came into Pittsburgh at like 240, and he first thing Tomlin said was you got to get your weight down, and he did that for his sophomore year. I think he dropped like 20 pounds. He ended up playing his career at like 215. Was at his best. So Snell can drop 5 to 10 pounds. I'm not talking about the drastic change. I'm not even saying that it has to be just dropping weight, maybe just getting more muscle, stuff like that, things that'll make him more explosive. So there's a balance, obviously. Work with Garrett Guimont, the strength and conditioning coach, to come up with a good plan. But very common for these running backs to lose some weight. To just feel more durable, have better conditioning, have more explosive playmaking. I'm not worried about Snell losing that pop. He's a big body dude. We're not asking him to be a small guy. He's not going to be Dre Archer. He's less his defined downhill run style. So Snell will be fine losing 5 pounds. Mutated Gino. That's very nice of you. Heard you on with Stan Stavron yesterday. That's awesome, brother. No, Stan just asked me to be on. There was no secret to it, but that was really cool. I've listened to Stan Stavron for all my life, basically growing up. Obviously one of the titans of Pittsburgh media, Pittsburgh sports media. So that was kind of a real treat. I don't get nervous for these interviews too often, but I was a little nervous for that one. And hopefully it went well. I mean, you guys tell me. The feedback I've gotten seems to be that things did go well. I was just really hoping a train wouldn't go by, because that was like, my biggest concern. First interview ever, train would go blaring by, and we were good. I had an interview later that afternoon with someone else, and a train just came blaring down. But I'd rather with that interview than it was with Stan Stavron. So really happy to be on there. Hopefully I'll be on again throughout draft season and throughout the regular season. To sign Bud Dupree or not, I think the reality is that they will tag him, and I'm in favor of it. So I think it will happen, and I'm okay with that. Justin, what website is that? I don't know what exactly that's referring to. I'm long-winded, so that question came in a couple minutes ago, but I will tell you whatever website. I just don't remember exactly what the context is there. Should we release Barron? I think you just look cap financially wise. If this team had more cap space, if they had $25 million in cap space, maybe you make a better case for keeping Barron. He played better at the end of the year, but if you don't release Barron and you want to tag Dupree, you get into the math of this thing. You can't create as much cap space restructuring guys as you could in other previous years because of the CBA expiring and you guys in the league going into an uncapped year. So it's just really hard to make the math work if you don't cut guys like Foster and Barron and Chick, and even picking up Vance's option is going to be tough just to make everything work financially. The best way really to make the Dupree tag work is I'm trying to think what I said on the podcast the other day, or a couple weeks ago. I think it was. It's releasing Foster, Chick, Barron, maybe not picking up Vance's option, extending Hayward, and restructuring Ben's deal. That kind of gets you to where you need to be financially. So those are kind of the moves you have to make. So extending Hayward will free up a little bit of space. Restructuring Ben will free up a little bit of space, about $3 million each for those guys projected, and that'll kind of get you the rest of the way after making those cuts. Hey Cecil, appreciate you stopping by. Steelers Nation never appreciated Bud Dupree. Do you think he will leave for that reason? Well, again, they have the ability to tag him, so it's not really. Speaking of Dupree, this is one of my favorite rushes all year against Andre Smith. Just with the punch here, just ran over Andre Smith. This was kind of one of the first plays early in the year where you kind of went, whoa, might be seeing a different version of Bud Dupree, a little more power. You get that play against the Titans in the preseason, but in a regular season game, not great at Andre Smith is. They brought him off the street. Basically, the Bengals O-line was a mess. They lose Jonah Williams. I mean, he's not a premier tackle, never was one, and now at the end of his career, but just kind of one of those plays where you go, okay, Dupree showing something that I haven't seen before from 48. But no, I mean, Dupree, I get the concept, yeah, because he took a lot of heat, and if he had a choice, maybe he wouldn't come back, but they can tag him, and they will tag him, so it's out of his control. Is Davis a free agent going into the season? Yes. Sean Davis is an unrestricted free agent, and he will be playing somewhere else in 2020. Jimmy Fowler, what are your feelings about Sean Davis, Artie Burns coming back? I think the defense was fine without them. Yeah, I agree. Burns certainly will not be back. He's already recognized that, and Davis with Minkah there almost certainly will not be back either. When his deal runs out, okay, not retire early. Fair enough. But Watt's deal will probably have to get done before Ben retires. So, something to consider. I think we did already a disservice lining him up on AB. I don't know. I don't really think so. You want to go against the best. And actually, Burns had success against AB. I remember the one training camp, maybe 2-3 years ago, the only corner that looked even decent versus AB was Artie Burns. So Burns always had kind of good training camps. Had a good training camp this past year, but they never translated. So, the idea was you want to go against the best. I don't think it really hurt his confidence. He actually probably raised his confidence because he was the only guy that looked like he had any chance against Antonio Brown in covering him. It just never translated to Sundays. Alex, this is the first year we run the inverted cover 3. I loved it, but don't remember seeing it in years past. I'm sure it's not the first. They started doing it more the back half of last year. They started to be able to disguise and rotate coverages more as the secondary kind of settled in and Edmonds got more experience. And there was just kind of more clarity with who was playing where. So you think about the Patriots game last year. I don't remember exactly the coverages they had. They had some inverted cover too, but they did a better job of disguising coverages the last, let's call it, quarter of 2018. It's something they obviously did a lot more in 2019 as the secondary got better. You got Minkah in the fold, so I wouldn't say it's the first time, but certainly something they've done more of as the secondary's gotten more talented and more experienced. Crunch, I think we need to stop blocking tight end like we had with Johnson, H-back type, because we really miss Rosie, would help our running game. Yeah, the blocking from tight ends was poor this year, and so when I critical of Vance, people say, well, the quarterback situation was bad and whatever, and then that's an element of it, but Vance was just bad as a blocker. Burnett struggled as a blocker. Gentry obviously didn't play much, and really his blocking was the rawest part of his game, something the team admitted right away. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it has to be the H-back type, but you do want to get a better blocker in there, absolutely. It'll certainly help out the run game, so I agree with you, Crunch. I would like to see a real power back, Brandon Jacobs, LeGarrette Blount type of back, makes their way to the Steelers. Well, they tried LeGarrette Blount. That didn't end so well, led with him storming out of the game early. No one drafts big backs like Pittsburgh does. I mean, almost every single back on their roster, even some of the backup future guys, are big aside from Kerrith White. Whether you're talking Connor, Snell, Samuels, as you would work out with the tight ends at the combine. He's not a tight end, but the bigger guy, Trey Edmonds. Ralph Webb, who was assigned to a futures deal. Like, the Steelers have more big 220-plus pound backs in their roster than probably any other team in football. So I think you've already seen a lot of it. I'd go the other way and say they probably need some more infusion of explosiveness and speed similar to Kerrith White. I think it's something that they are lacking. They have that kind of other element in the backfield. So I'd kind of go the other way than what you're talking about, Dragon Jay-Z. Oh, I should have asked what website you're watching from. Yeah, this is NFL Game Pass. I don't know if you can see it. NFL Game Pass. Anyone can buy it. Totally public thing. It's $100 for the year. They may have dropped the price during the off season. The subscription runs through July. That's when it renews. So it's probably cheaper now. But yeah, NFL Game Pass website. You can get the all 22 from there. Crunch, I think Barron was there to bring Bush along. Well, I mean, Barron was signed before Bush. You didn't know if you could trade up for him. I think Barron was signed basically because you didn't know if you could get Devin Bush in the draft. I'm sure when they signed him, they knew they were targeting Devin Bush and they would love him to become a Steeler, but you never know if you're gonna, because you knew you had to trade up for him. You knew he was not going to fall to number 20, so you just kind of never know. Can you make a deal work on draft day? Will the other side agree? Will it all come together? And if you didn't, and you didn't sign Barron, you just had Vince. Fort was gone. Then you're back in the same position you were in 2018. We had one inside linebacker, and that was it. So Barron was kind of the insurance policy for if you didn't get Devin Bush. I think that's why the Barron signing came about. Plus, he was released, came on the radar, opportunity to get him, all that stuff. Nick Markman historically has always loved throwing to tight ends. Heath Spaeth, Jesse Vance. Do you think Vance's numbers decreased drastically with Ben back? Increased drastically? No, I mean, I don't think they increased drastically. I don't think they'll have some sort of career year numbers wise. Obviously, you would expect the numbers to be more similar to 2018 compared to 2019. I think the question is just, how hurt is Vance? Is his body breaking down, or was he just dealing with an injury last year? I think those are the questions that we can't answer right now. So you would expect the numbers to increase, sure, but Vance also needs to play better, and there's a worry about just, is his body simply breaking down? And he's 30 years old. He's had a lot of injuries in his career. Tight end's a pretty physically demanding position, and I just don't know how much left he has in the tank. And if his tank's on empty, it's not going to matter a whole lot who's the quarterback. It'll help with Ben returning, but it's not going to change things a whole lot. Bud could not do what he did this year with the secondary we have now. Yeah, obviously a good secondary helps. It helps the pass rush. Also, a good pass rush helps the coverage. It's a chicken or the egg type of thing. I just think Dupree played well. I think if you look at his successes, I wouldn't say it's really a credit to just the secondary. I think Dupree just played well. He played with more power, played with more technique, and was just healthy. So that's where I start giving the credit out. But I think that's a secondary reason. Pardon the pun. The secondary certainly was a factor, but I just think Dupree played well. Do Steelers draft quarterback or running back in round 2? Quarterback, no. Running back, I'd be very surprised. Not going to discount it totally because, long ways to go. We'll see what happens with pre-draft visits and interest and where they show up with pro days. We know the history there. If Kevin Colbert's at your pro day, then, you want to probably take notice of that. Same with Mike Tomlin. But I'd be pretty surprised if running back was the pick at number 49 and quarterback, no chance of that happening. Do you think the Steelers should make a trade for Bell? And if so, who would you trade? I think it's interesting on paper. I think they would love to have him back. And obviously, there were rumors at the deadline. Well, I shouldn't say rumors. I think Bell said right after the trade deadline, when he ultimately stayed in New York, that the Steelers had called and had expressed interest. And obviously, their running game was struggling. They always wanted to retain Bell. The issue was never, we don't like Le'Veon Bell. It was just a matter of money. And if you trade for Bell, the guaranteed money stays with the Jets, and that kind of solves that whole issue. Right there, takes that issue out of the equation. But again, like I said earlier, with how cap strapped they are, I don't even know how you make it work financially, even knowing that some of that guaranteed money, all the guaranteed money, a portion of the contract is going to remain with the Jets that they're going to have to pay for. I just don't see a viable way to make it work. I think, in theory, on paper, they would like to have him back, and I'd be open to that idea. But just financially, they barely have money to do the things they have to do, where it's tagging Dupree and giving tenders to Filer and Hilton and possibly Canada and guys like that. They have no money. They're just flat broke, and it's like buying a big screen TV when you're flat broke. You want the big screen TV? Yeah, everyone wants a big screen TV, but you have no money. You got to keep the lights on, and this team has to keep the lights on with doing the things it has to do with the players currently on the roster, as opposed to trying to get a former player back onto the roster. So unlikely, although I do think it fits, and I think they would love to in a perfect world. Solarverse, hey, appreciate you stopping by. Just got here, no problem. So forgive if this been asked. How much of a drop would an average outside linebacker be from Bud with attention to Tuitt, Hayward, Watt, and these DBs? Would letting Bud go be smarter? I don't know. I get what you're saying, but this defense, all good Steelers defenses have always had really strong edge rushers, at least since they've been a 3-4. Obviously, it was the 4-3. I mean, they didn't need the edge rusher. They had defensive ends and they had interior linemen and great off-ball linebackers. But you think about the 90s, think about Greg Lloyd and Kevin Green, and you think about the early 2000s, you got Jason Gilden, Joey Porter, even Clark Hagan's had a couple years, although he's obviously not on that level. You think about Harrison and Woodley, you think about today with Watt and Dupree. So Steelers defense really needs to have strong edge rushers to be able to function. So I don't think you can necessarily replace all that with just interior defensive linemen. You want guys to win on the edge to create forced fumbles. When your interior defensive line creates pressure too and forces the quarterback to escape, you need edge guys who can capitalize and make those plays. So it's like saying, if you lost TJ Watt, could this defense still function as well? And of course not. I mean, it's not going to happen. So Dupree's not at that level, obviously, but he's not that far away either. And obviously, you'd rather have Dupree than trying to go out and find a replacement. Just kind of an issue you're creating for yourself. So don't see it happening. I just want to watch Zach Gentry on this play. Just a little. A little tight on the route here, a little stiff. I think Gentry trying to make this cut, and that's just a tall, leggy dude that he is. Not a great athlete, and that is not the most athletic route I've ever seen, even by tight end. And poor Johnny Holton could never catch a pass. Dragon Jay-Z, you want to see a 240-plus pound hybrid fullback if you would. I mean, you don't see those guys in college. How many 240-plus pound players do you see in college football in the spread system? Very few, and very few that have the talent to make it at the next level. I mean, Jonathan Dwyer, not exactly a great pick, so I think you should be pretty happy with the big backs they have now, because like I said, no team likes their backs big as much as the Pittsburgh Steelers. I had high hopes for Mason McDonald connection after 2 red zone touchdowns against Seattle. Yeah, I don't want to close the book on Mason and say this is all he can be. It's basically his rookie year. You want to see how guys improve. It's really their first chance to start and play. But obviously, the idea of him being a franchise guy is certainly slim. I would say slim odds, but the team has a lot of confidence, at least openly, outwardly. They're saying they have a lot of confidence in him, and I just want to see him and Duck even get into camp next year and just kind of see how they look after going through all they've gone through in 2019. So just don't want to make any final decisions on either of those guys. Mutated Junior, I really appreciate you sending an email. That means a lot. So. Stan seemed to think I did a good job. Hopefully I did. And hopefully I'll be back on. He seemed open to the idea, so fingers crossed. I worry less about personal. My concern is he needed to win one game over the past 2 years to get in a tournament and couldn't. That sucked. Yeah. I mean, last 2 years his team's been in prime playoff position, 7-2-1 in 2018, 8-5 in 2019, and you missed the playoffs in both those years. And you went into Week 17 needing help in both those games, and that's pretty crushing. So, right there with you. Obviously, last year, the circumstances of Ben and the offense really struggling needs to be considered and recognized. But this is an 8-5 team with the same quarterbacks that fell apart at the end. So it's not like they weren't winning with those guys in the first place. And so that's still a disappointment. And the excuse of, well, Ben wasn't there, it can't be the sale end all. You can still be critical of how the year ended and the disappointment for back-to-back years where you should have made the playoffs. You had like a 90% chance of doing so, and everything falls apart. You can't win the games you have to win down the stretch, especially for a Tomlin team that generally are really strong in December. Prior to 2018, Tomlin teams in December, minus the Unleashing Hell year, were really good. I mean, even some of the 8-8 years, 2012 or 2013, I think they finished the one year like 6-2. After starting 0-4, so that they generally finish stronger than what they start, and that hasn't happened the past 2 years, which is certainly disappointing. All this money, all this talk about money, pay them off the books and pay a small salary on paper, fit under the cap. Yeah, Mark, that's not a thing you can do. I appreciate the creativity, but not a thing. Ali Olroby. Sorry if I'm butchering that. Sup, Alex? Love the channel. Appreciate it. Do you see us going receiver nearly rounds 3rd, 4th? Yeah, I'm not going to discount it entirely. It's not the number one priority on my list, but I'll give a little tease for my mock. I surprised myself even by where I had him taking a receiver at in my mock draft tomorrow. But check that out. Again, it'll drop 8:30 Eastern time on Wednesday morning. You'll see where I had him taking a receiver, and you'll find out who and where in that mock draft. Did you hear Harrison talking about how Bush reminds him of Ferrier? I did not hear those comments, but high praise from James Harrison. So yeah, I think Bush had a really strong rookie year, more athletic James Ferrier, I would say, but high praise from Debo. But it's $1 million question, or should I say $18 million? I just can't help but say no to it. Yeah, I understand, but even if you're in that camp, even if you're saying Dupree should not come back for that price tag, the reality is, and I think everyone knows this, I'm sure you know this too, is that he's going to be back. You know, Tomlin said it's priority, and Rooney said it's a priority. When Rooney says you're a priority, you're a priority. You're coming back. When you have the tag option, you're not going to be a free agent. You're not going to hit the market. So he will be back, and now you just hope they get a long-term deal to lower that cap hit. Boston College Eagle running back A.J. Dillon is a 250-pound back. Have you watched highlights on him? I did see his name going to my mock draft. I haven't really watched him up close and personally. I mean, there are obviously a couple guys that you could say. There's a kid from TCU that's like 234 that I saw one little blur from a Steelers scout that seemed impressed with him. So, I mean, those guys do exist. There's only 3 or 4, and is that guy really good enough to be in the NFL full-time and have a significant impact? I think Dillon is not a highly rated player, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm sure you can tell me if I'm wrong on that, Cecil. But, I mean, there just aren't many of those guys that can play at this level. And this team's done it before. I mean, I don't want to say that, because they've had past failures, you can't draft another guy. But, like Frank Summers, who remembers Frank Summers from UNLV? That was kind of that dude that just never really had a home, never really had a fit, dealing with weight and all that stuff. I mean, so I don't want to, I don't know. I think my point is that they've drafted big backs almost routinely, almost predictably. The one reason why I was so confident they were going to pick Benny Snell, and I shared an article about it, that Benny Snell's destined to be a Steeler, was because he was a big back, and they like backs that are productive and have size and some power. And so I think yearning for more of that is a little off the mark, because that's literally all they have on this roster right now, sans Gareth White. Julio Rivas, thoughts on Jaylen Samuels? I don't know. Jaylen's a weird guy in the sense of, not personally, obviously, but like, who is Jaylen Samuels? That's a very existential question for me to ask, but like, what does he do best? What does he do well? How does he fit? He's just kind of okay at most things, not even good at anything. Like, even as a receiver, his routes aren't that crisp. He's not explosive. His hands aren't even that good. I don't know exactly what his drop rate was, but I felt like he had far too many drops last year on some easy passes. As a runner, I mean, he's got some size. His vision isn't particularly strong. I mean, he's not a power back. He's not a speed back. He's not a good pass protector. He's just kind of there. I mean, a little bit as a receiver, a little bit as a runner. Never really found a home or a fit. His yards per carry this year was what 2.4, 2.7, 2.9, whatever it was. I think only 1 or 2 backs, Kalen Ballage, and maybe somebody else had a worse yards per carry. So I just don't. He's a third string type of guy. Not even a good special teamer. They have him out there, not that impressive, covering kicks and punts and on the punt block team and stuff like that. I'm not saying to cut the guy, but he's not really the answer in any sort of significant way in any phase of the running back position. Maybe that's a little harsh. Still a young guy, trying to define roles and get his weight right and figure out who he is as well. And he obviously had his moments. I thought against Cleveland, the second game, he had a pretty good game against New England. Last year, his rookie year, obviously, that's kind of where he came on scene. So I don't want to kill the guy. I know I kind of am, but I don't see him as really being the answer. Certainly not above James Conner or Benny Snell. Hey, Crunch Crunch, appreciate you listening from the Bahamas. You didn't. This is my poor geography here, so I'm gonna probably apologize for my stupidity in advance. But you weren't affected by any of that Jamaican earthquake stuff. I know that was pretty nasty, the 7.7 earthquake and the tsunami warnings afterwards. So hopefully you're safe. I'm assuming you are, Crunch Crunch. But thanks for tuning in. Solarverse, I was listening to another Steelers podcast, and on there it claimed Ben had 3 of 5 tendons torn in his elbow. I have not seen or I have not heard or seen that anywhere else as anyone else. No, I don't know specifically. I believe it was a tendon, but I don't know anything specifics really getting into the exact nature of the injury. And had that been disclosed, I'm sure most fans would know it right now. I would have seen that somewhere else. So that sounds like some baseless and reckless speculation. But all I know for sure is that I shouldn't even say I know for sure, but the report was it was not Tommy John, and I believe it was a tendon. So the team just never came out with it, and no one reported on it. No, Summers was a fullback, but he was also kind of both. I mean, he was supposed to be that big back that could kind of carry and be a fullback. He wasn't a traditional lead blocker. Like, I mean, I can look up what Fred Summers' production was at UNLV. I mean, he was supposed to kind of be a mix. Um, I don't want to get too bogged down in this conversation. I just think finding a 250-pound guy is not many guys out there, and the Seals have a ton of big backs. Yeah, I mean, Summers had almost 2,000 yards in 2 years at UNLV and 14 touchdowns. So to call him just a fullback, I mean, that's not what he was. That's not why they drafted him. Not Seals related, but do you think there's any chance Tom Brady actually leaves the Patriots? So many rumors about him going to the Chargers. Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, Brady's certainly going to play in 2020. There is, for the first time, an open question of where that will be. My guess is ultimately he'll be back in New England, but I think that's still a little up in the air. But it seemed Robert Kraft seemed open to having Brady return, and I just can't see the Patriots without Tom Brady until he physically just can't play anymore. Nice tackle here by Ulysses Gilbert III. I'm really excited to get UG3 back, get Dupree out there celebrating with him. I think that's William Gay, maybe too, getting all hyped up. But yeah, don't forget about UG3 right here, shedding the block, good angle, good hard hit on Erickson, a good kick returner. Really excited to get him back. Had that back injury, put him on IR about week 8. But assuming Barrett's gone, I think we'll see a chance for Gilbert to potentially play more, or at least be next man up. And I just thought he had a really nice camp and a nice rookie year before going down with injury. Yeah, Stamos has no trade value. Tiny tremors we good. Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Crunch, crunch. Do you think Ben should or will run the offense to complement the defense more ball control? No, Ben shouldn't change the offense in terms of running it one bit, regardless what the defense is doing. Just you run your offense the way you would normally run it. Don't let it dictate what you do based on what the defense is capable of. You want to have the same approach, and that's the only way I would go about it. I think Pittsburgh should draft Clyde Edwards Hilaire in the second round. He's only 5'8", but he's a speed demon and he can catch like a receiver. Yeah, I know one of those many LSU guys that came out. I know Nick's a big fan of him. I just, running back is at the most important position. Do you have to put a second round pick in that position? No. I think that's been proven. You don't have to have the highest pick invested in that area. And again, just with all the other needs, like if you draft a running back, then what are you doing into your offensive line? Assuming Foster and Finney are gone, and what are you doing nose tackle where plays Hargrave? What are you doing safety depth if Edmonds or Minka goes down? What are you doing at tight end? Even if Vance comes back, I mean, you have to answer those questions too. I think in the framework of let's draft a running back in the second round, which I consider more of a luxury pick, or at least more of a luxury pick than the other positions I just mentioned. And I think it's really hard to try to make it all work. What I will say, let me get a drink of water here first, and I'll go on a little rant. Not a rant, but just I want to put it out there. And it's an easy thing to say. This is not me sticking my neck out, but I think this team should strongly consider trading back from 49. Now, you'll have to see what happens. You won't know until you're on day 2, and you can weigh your option in terms of what teams are offering. But assuming free agency, they're pretty inactive, which is almost certain. Mike Hilton here. It's absolutely lit up. Kind of slipped. But assuming, you haven't transformed your team too much, if you trade back, pick up another decent pick, to help add and kind of give you some more options here. Maybe another pick in that 3rd, 4th round range. Trade back 10 or 15 spots. I'd be open to that. Just try to add as much draft capital as possible because you're going to have to fill the needs of this team almost strictly through the draft because you can't do anything really in free agency. So I think this team should really consider trading back in the second round to pick up an extra, early day 3 type draft pick to just give them another way to add to this roster and fill some of those positions that they're probably not going to get to address significantly so in free agency. Just a thought. Okay, I'll check that out about Debo, Nick. I haven't listened. I don't always listen to some of the media stuff. Obviously, I've been following a lot of the Kobe Bryant stuff. Just tragic, but I'll check those comments out from Debo. Yeah, Brady certainly won't retire. It's just a question of where he's going to play. He's playing in 2020, probably in 2021. It's just an open question of where. I do think he ultimately remains with the Patriots. Yeah, Steelers also some of the small school guys. Obviously, the Kent State guys, whether you're talking James Harrison, Jack Lambert, Rosie Nix, Mac guys, they've drafted a ton of. That's basically anywhere that Dan Colbert or Brandon Hunt have been from the scouting side of things. This team's really attacked and drafted those type of guys. So yeah, certainly Deontay Johnson. I mean, they had Johnson and Gilbert and Sutton Smith, which didn't work out, but he was there. All guys from the MAC. And then previous years, a core for other names from the MAC. I forget other guys, but a lot of those MAC schools, MACtion. Lately, Tomlin watched a lot of Thursday Night Football. I think Foster and Pouncey are coming back. Or do you think it's time to move on? Pouncey will be back for sure, no question about that. Foster, I don't want to say 100% he's gone, but more likely than not, again, especially given the cap situation or the lack of cap. So I think Foster, my guess, Foster's played his last down as a Steeler, which is sad. Had a great career. My biggest fear is that with Eli retired and Rivers seemingly washed up, the Ben's the only Steeler quarterback because he went out early in the year and we didn't get to see him decline like the others. I'm not following that. My biggest fear is that with Eli retired and Rivers seemingly washed up, the Ben is only still the Steelers quarterback because he went out early in the year. Okay, I think I see what you're saying. I don't know. I don't have any fears with Ben. I welcome number 7 back after watching Duck and Mason and how bad this offense was. The worst offense I've seen basically since like the Kent Graham days. Like I welcome Ben back. I think every Steelers fan. Yeah, I mean I understand the concerns about how will he rehab? Will he be the same Ben? How much longer can he really play for? But it's just gonna feel good to see number 7. That first big play he's gonna make, you're gonna say, you know what, I'll deal with those things. Those are champagne problems. You're just happy that your franchise quarterback is back and leading an offense that looks competent, like it actually can, score on an opening drive or put up more than 10 points in a game. This offense does not have to be elite with how well this defense is played, assuming it stays at that level. But Ben can bring it to a point where you have a serious chance to make a run of this thing, and I am nothing but excited for Ben Roethlisberger to return. Hey, Wes. I appreciate you stopping by. Out of all positions, I feel we need a tight end the most. Unfortunately, as far as I can tell, the next draft class doesn't have any great tight ends to choose from. Maybe through free agency. Again, there's no money for free agency. The tight end market spiked last year. You saw Jesse James get $6 million per year, and Higbee got paid, Nick Boyle got paid. So really not a whole lot doing there. I think this tight end class, I think it's starting to emerge. Nice rush here by Dupree, by the way, in a big moment against Andre Smith. You got Hopkins, you got Thad Moss. Your Steeler fans are definitely going to clamor about, and certainly fits on paper. Power 5, underclassmen, NFL bloodlines. Randy Moss's dad. Really, on paper, again, fits what this team's looking for, position of need, all that jazz. So I think you can find someone. You just have to understand, regardless of who the tight end is, even in really strong classes or top talent, it's so rare to find tight ends that make a huge impact in year one. It's one of the toughest positions to make the transition to. So you just can't count on that guy to be a real impact player in year one, but he can contribute, obviously, and then be ready for year 2 where you can really kind of make that jump even more so than other sophomore year players. And that's what you're doing this for, is maybe you can say, find a way to keep Vance for 2020, pair him with a high draft pick, let Vance go after 2020, and then that draft pick becomes kind of the guy heading into his sophomore year. That's kind of a rough way to look at it. Maybe after next season you get Jesse back and pair him with that draft pick. That's a Madden way to look at it, but that's kind of my thought process. Our offense needs some explosiveness from Michael T-Well. I don't care if that's O-line, running back, or running back, tight end. Something needs to change. Yeah, certainly a position. You'll be adding interior offensive line help. You'll be adding tight end help. They always draft a receiver. I think since Colbert's been GM in 2000, there's only been 2 seasons where this team has not drafted one wide receiver somewhere. And I think they're going to draft another. Maybe not super high, but certainly will draft one. And running back is potentially there, I think, on day 3, but not as high on my list of needs. Yeah, Julio, Thad Moss, you're going to hear a lot about Thad Moss throughout the pre-draft process in connection with Pittsburgh. I'm pretty confident in saying that. Yep, Mark, UG3 will get a shot at linebacker. Really excited to have him back. Yeah, Tommy Gunn was better than what the Steelers had this year. Again, I think the last time you had this bad of a quarterback situation was like the stretch where Ben missed, where you had Vic and Landry, which was bad. And then before Ben, was basically like the Kent Graham kind of days. There's a train coming. I'll mute my mic here real second, and I'll hop back on. Again, thanks everybody for stopping by. We'll do the stream for a little bit longer, so get those questions in if you have any last-minute thoughts. Michael Gibson from Memphis looks like a great running back prospect. He has good size and speed, also wide receiver experience. Yeah, he's an interesting guy. Memphis always has those type of playmakers. Running back, receiver, kick return, value. He played primarily running back at the Senior Bowl. I talked to him. We'll have an interview posted with him in the next couple of days. But yeah, Memphis always kind of finds those type of guys. Obviously, Steelers have a strong Memphis connection. So we'll see. Duvernay from Texas looks like he could be a legit slot deep threat, which we could definitely use. Yeah, potentially. I was not super impressed with Devin Duvernay at the Senior Bowl. I didn't really see him stand out. I don't know if I'm quite on that hype. Maybe I'm just missing it. I haven't looked at him super closely. But yeah, a name to consider, absolutely. Yeah, crunch. I think it's a good way to frame it with Ben. Yeah, I think him just taking less sacks over the last 5 or so years of his career has been the number one reason why he's still playing today. If Ben was there, I think the offense would have been a lot better. Absolutely. No doubt about it. Alright guys, if you guys have any other questions, let me know. Yes, Crunch, if that's directed to me, my goal is to have a live stream. It's supposed to be every Monday. I know today's Tuesday, but it's supposed to be 7 p.m. Eastern Time Monday for about an hour. It's kind of my hope and my goal. Again, I'll have a mock draft on Steelers Depot for Wednesday morning. I'll try to do a video for this channel that'll kind of go through my mock draft a little bit. We'll see how well I can cobble and edit that thing together, but I will try to do something with that. Would you for a guy like DPJ out of Michigan, I don't know exactly what you're asking about Donovan Peoples-Jones. I haven't watched him yet. I know he was a big high school recruit, a pretty big body. I think you're right, didn't have a great Michigan career. Shea Patterson didn't help him out. Patterson struggled at the Senior Bowl, by the way. But we'll try to watch Peoples-Jones here before the draft. All right, any other last-minute questions? We'll wrap the stream up at 8. On the button. That'll be about an hour stream. Thanks everybody for joining. If you have a question, let me know before we sign off. Ace Mace 0. Do you really think one player is worth $20 million? Look at what the Bears gave the linebacker from the Raiders. Khalil Mack. He is good, but can the position make that much of a difference? Yeah, I just think you want to retain really good talent. Dupree won't be $20 million, by the way. But if you're talking Watt, you're gonna draft and develop Watt and then lose him. And plus, $20 million is still a ton of money, obviously, but it's not what it once was. The salary cap's gone up. It'll continue to go up. And so, what $20 million was in 2000, where that was like a fourth of your cap, it's now like an eighth of your cap, which is still, again, a ton of money. But I want to at least put that out there. The caps can continue to rise, and, what $20 was then isn't what it is now. That's my math for you. Zach Banner, by the way, always first to congratulate his teammates on a job well done on a field goal that's successful. Likes to give Foster a bear hug. We love to add some speed to the offense. Yeah, absolutely, Roland. I'm with you 100%. Do you think this O-lineman class is kind of weak? I need to study it more. I don't know if I'd call it weak. I think the tackle class is really strong at the top. They're going to be like 4 or 5 tackles taken in the first 20 picks, probably, whether you're talking Becton from Louisville, the Iowa kid. I'm bad with names right now with that group because it's not on the Steelers' radar. I think the kid from Georgia, Davis or something. Josh Jones from Houston had a really good week, and Mobile would probably be that second tier of offensive tackles, probably going somewhere in the 20s or 30s. So interior offensive line might be a little bit weaker. Again, I need to explore this class some more, but there'll be some talent there, definitely. And versatility is obviously always a calling card too if you're Pittsburgh. Steeler for life, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Mutated Genome, where do you think Jauan Jennings will go in the draft? It's hard to project right now, especially with this receiver class being so deep. But Jennings is a really interesting guy. High energy dude at the Senior Bowl. Very, very passionate in a good way. And just kind of a crazy body type where he's just a super huge slot receiver. The big slot receivers like Juju, like Cooper Kupp, that are just impossible to tackle in the open field. Just one of the most angry runners I've seen at receiver in a long time. So it's hard to say exactly where he's going to go. I think most people have him pegged as some sort of day 3 pick. This receiver class is so talented, it is so stacked, so it naturally pushes those guys down further than probably where their value really should lie. But in a class that's stacked like this, I mean, you could see those guys like Denzel Mims and Jennings, like several others, get pushed down further than maybe their talent should justify. Did Ben make $34 million this year? How did the Steelers pay him since he was injured majority of the year? I forget what his number was, but he was paid a lot, and there's no split salary for Ben, so he just gets paid. Every player gets paid every week of the season. There's 17 game checks. That's how a player gets paid, and they don't get paid in the offseason. They're not getting checks right now. There may be things with signing bonuses. Signing bonuses can get spread out over time and paid in installments. So if you sign a guy to a $20 million signing bonus, he doesn't, you don't have to write a check for $20 million. Teams might want to spread that out if you're trying to pay that out in cash. But players get paid 17 game checks per season. The round, that's for Jennings. Yeah, it's just hard to say. It might be day 3, but I really like Jauan Jennings. Yeah, Banner's a lot of fun. I got a guy in my mock draft tomorrow that kind of reminds me of Zach Banner, on and off the field. So throwing that out there. Alright guys, I'm going to wrap up the stream. Again, my goal is to do the stream every Monday, 7 p.m. I have a mock draft going up Wednesday morning, 8:30 Eastern Time. So let me know your feedback on that. I'll do a video for this as well, for the mock draft. It'll kind of highlight it, because I think that'll probably get some good views and some good content to create in the off season. So thank you guys so much for being here, and we'll talk to you soon.